This series is all about universes, multiverses, planets, worlds, continents and cities. We're delving not into specific games, but into the milieus created for them. We'll be looking at where these settings came from, their major features, and why you should consider them for your own gaming experiences. For this first episode, I'm going to be looking at the Spelljammer setting, first published for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition in 1989. This will have some similarities to the imminent release of the setting for the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons, already out as I record this in the United States, but coming in about a month to the European market. And we will look at that and the differences between it and the original in a future video. For now, settle back and enjoy the fun carousel that was and will be Spelljammer. Dungeons & Dragons adventures in space. By the close of 1st edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons and its non-advanced sister, the game had already accumulated a handful of official settings, notably Greyhawk, the Forgotten Realms, Dragonlance and the known world of Mystara. Beyond all of these worlds sat the Planes, as recently examined in 1987's Manual of the Planes. One of the premises of that work was that all of the official settings existed within the prime material plane, and one could travel between them by means of planar travel magic and abilities. With further worlds on the horizon, TSR were looking for a way in which the settings could form part of a wider whole, and accessible not just for higher level beings with access to dimension hopping capabilities, a meta setting, if you would, which could accommodate most or all levels of play and could drive sales across products released for all worlds, where players of Greyhawk would generally purchase only Greyhawk books, and players of the Forgotten Realms would shell out for those. Players within a meta setting could find relevance to all of this product and open up a wider base of sales opportunity. And so it was that the core premise of Spelljammer was born, a campaign setting that could encompass all campaign settings and be usable across all levels of play. Of course, this niche would later be filled by the Planescape setting from 1994, but until then, the Planes had a perceived high-level entry point, and so another solution was sought. Spelljammer setting was that solution. Here, all manner of adventures could be had within magical space, and, more importantly, new worlds and old could be visited by space-based characters. World-bound characters could be tempted into space through the discovery of oft-hidden spelljamming magicology. Greyhawk Ruins, among others, included a spelljamming vessel player characters could discover. And through that mechanism, characters originally bound to one world or another could make the leap into space. And, importantly, from the product-shifting view, travel to other worlds. Ever wondered what a Shulung invasion of the Scarlet Brotherhood might look like? Well, if you wanted it to happen, it now could. The Spelljammer core box set appeared in 1989, shortly after the introduction of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition itself. Products were released to support it, including adventures, monstrous compendiums, reference works, and additional box sets, from 1990 through to 1993. After that, well, it's no real coincidence that no further products were released for the setting, in lieu of the initial Planescape releases in 1994. Key products released during this period were an expansion on the Rock of Bral, the default home base, first presented in the campaign setting, via SJR4, SJR being the code for Spelljammer Reference, of course. 3 volumes describing the areas of space within the vicinity of the Forgotten Realms, Greyhawk and Dragonlance settings, in the form of Realm Space, Grey Space and Kryn Space, SJRs 2, 6 and 7 respectively, and 2 volumes of Monsters, Monstrous Compendium Appendices 7 and 9. SJR1, Lost Ships, added more spelljamming vessels to the roster, presented in the core set, while SJR4, Practical Planetology, introduced further detail into the process of creating and describing worlds and star systems. The SJR series was rounded off by a collection of layers of space monsters, SJR8, Space Layers, and a Spelljamming-specific DM screen, SJR2, which also came with a number of cardboard stand-ups of Spelljammer ships to add to those provided within the core set and elsewhere. The adventures were varied, from the introductory SJA1 Wild Space, with its pirate-based compilation sequel SJA2 Skull and Crossbows, to more campaign-style frameworks such as SJS1 Goblin's Return and its sequel SJQ1 Heart of the Enemy. SJA3 Crystal Spheres is a compilation of a variety of unique settings to visit, with an overarching plot to give reason for visiting them. SJA4 Under the Dark Fist is a high-level campaign adventure dealing with an epic invasion. Apart from the core campaign setting, 3 additional box sets were released. In 1991, The Legend of the Spelljammer shed more light on the mysterious giant Marie Celeste of the Spaceways, in some ways reflecting back to the Metamorphosis Alpha setting of old. Spelljammer ship-to-ship combat came under scrutiny with the War Captain's Companion, which provided even more cardboard stand-up ships. Finally, an enclosed Spelljammer campaign setting arrived in 1993 as the Astramundi Cluster, in my opinion probably the weakest of the Spelljammer releases, but with some elements of spacey fun present. A final note, 1992 saw a Spelljammer-specific release in the complete line of volumes, expanding the Player's Handbook, the complete Spacefarer's Handbook, with class options, races, new equipment, kit, and other odds and sods. Beyond 1993, Spelljammer was gone but not forgotten. As noted, Spelljammer references and ships kept turning up in odd places. Within the era of 3rd edition, Spelljammer came under the spotlight in the pages of Dungeon Magazine, issue 92, bringing spelljamming rules to the D20 system. In 2005's Lords of Madness book, which focused on aberrations, the Nyogi monsters first introduced in the Spelljammer setting, but later entering the core Dungeons & Dragons rules from the 2nd edition's Monstrous Manual on, were expanded to include their spelljamming heritage and a crashed spelljamming ship. 4th edition made mention of Spelljammer in its own Manual of the Planes, presenting spelljamming as a method of traversing the planes. And of course, 5th edition is on the brink of releasing, or in the States already has, Spelljammer as a setting for a new generation of D&D players. The basic features of the Spelljammer setting are: all campaign settings exist within a crystal sphere, encompassing their star system, whatever form that takes, and the primary campaign world. The area within the crystal sphere is known as Wild Space. The crystal spheres bob like bubbles within a rainbow-hued flammable sea of phlogiston. To travel between one crystal sphere and another, one must chart the phlogiston carefully. Travel through space is similar to travel on normal oceans, other than the 3-dimensional aspect of it, and sail power doesn't really cut it. Several means of powering craft through space exist, the most common being spelljamming, the use of a device, as helm, which transforms magical energy into motive power. Other means of propulsion exist, including psionic helms, giant hamster cages for giant space hamsters, helms that drain life force, and more. The setting has a premise that the player characters possess a ship, either by discovering one, if they begin play as world-bound beings, starting play with one from the get-go, or being part of the crew of another's vessel. At first, this may be quite a basic ship, often a common world-bound vessel that someone has bolted a spelljamming helm to. As the characters gain fame and fortune, they may acquire a better vessel, or even command the crews of more than one such craft. Campaigns can take place within the wild space of a single crystal sphere, or across 2 or more crystal spheres as the characters chart their way across the phlogiston ocean. Either approach has its merits, and a single crystal sphere can possess enough setting material to build a satisfying campaign upon, particularly where different worlds within the crystal sphere possess some level of conflict between each other that the player characters can get involved with or resolve. And that is, pretty much it, in a nutshell. Other than the matter of the legendary Spelljammer itself, this is a huge vessel, or perhaps a living creature, that owes a legacy back to the mariners' legends of lore. It is said to travel the phlogiston, following a mysterious path of its own devising, occasionally entering crystal spheres, events which are often perceived as ill omens by the sphere's spelljamming inhabitants. What is the true nature of the Spelljammer, and what is its purpose? Well, hunt down the Legend of the Spelljammer box set. That might answer those questions. Maybe. Spelljammer is one of my favourite settings of the 1st and 2nd edition era. Of any era, actually. It's different from any other setting. Granted, its reason for existing is somewhat cynical, but understandable. However, from the perspective of a game filled with very similar pseudo-medieval fantasy settings, it made for an excellent change of pace. If the following things check boxes for you, then yes, Spelljammer may be exactly for you. Do you have a desire to run campaigns in more than one world? I mean, think about how knights from Furiondi and samurai from Kozakura might band together to bring down Takesis. Do you like freewheeling campaigns where the potential for travel doesn't depend on the speed of a donkey and the quality of the roads? Are mind flayers, beholders and Neogi among your favourite monsters? Does the thought of watching your players make ready to exit a crystal sphere to enter the phlogiston, registering that none of them has yet said, "and will douse the teely lamps," bring an evil smile to your dungeon mastering features? Well, okay, that last one won't be such a thing with the new edition of Spelljammer, but hey-ho. Oh, and do you just love the idea of swashbuckling adventures in Black Pearl-esque ships and, stranger, in space? And do you want to discover the mysteries of the giant space hamsterus Rex? If so, then yes, Spelljammer could well be for you. And that's it for this episode of View Over the Milieu. As the series progresses, we'll touch on other settings, not just from Dungeons & Dragons, but from a plethora of games and corners. So stick around. It'll be fun. And that's it for this video. Thank you for watching.